Now being recorded.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. I want to apologize right off the bat. I know it looks like I'm looking off to my right, and it's because I am, because I had a little weird thing happen with my monitor just moments before. So you're going to have to just accept that we're rolling with it. And we're going to roll with it easily because for 5 years, I've been using Traction, part of the entrepreneurial operating system, as a team member over at the Goering Center, and it prepares you to be resilient and react smartly in the moment. So welcome today. As you know, we're going to talk about the entrepreneurial operating system. The book is Traction by Gina Witham. And we have with us 3 experts: Crystal Faulkner, who is an EOS implementer; Rex Wetherill, who is a CEO of 2 companies in the region, Hydrotech and IoT Diagnostics. And next to Rex is Sylvia Ellert, and she is the corporate sales manager for Hydrotech. In the parlance of Traction, Rex is the visionary and Sylvia is the implementer. So while Rex might have the big title as CEO boss, it's really Sylvia, right, who is making sure, holding everybody accountable to the team and making sure that Traction is implemented well. So Crystal, thank you for coming today. And I'm going to turn it over to you in just a minute. Crystal is a certified and professional EOS implementer. So maybe when you start off, you can talk just a little bit about the certification process that you went through so people understand how that works for us. But before we get started, I want to, as we always do, acknowledge our sponsors. Today we are sponsored by JP Morgan Chase, MOM and FSN, and Johnson Investment Council. And it is through the generous sponsorship of companies like this, as well as volunteers like the 3 you see in front of you today, that we're able to offer this programming free or at very little cost throughout the year. Of course, today's webinar is free. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. I'm going to turn over the controls to Crystal in just a second. But this is being recorded today. If you had some friends that you were, or co-workers that were planning to join you, and for whatever reason you see they're not on, you'll be able to share this recording with them later. In the lower left corner of your screen, you'll see a chat box, and we will be asking you questions and taking your questions throughout the program today. If you want to just go ahead and enter them in there, I'll be monitoring that, and we have a dedicated time for Q&A. At the end of the program today. So we'll be saving those up and we'll try to get to all of them. We may have to consolidate some questions as we go. But I think that's all for now. So Crystal, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And as Lisa mentioned, most of you know me as a CPA, which I am. I'm the market leader for MCM CPAs. But what I've found is that this process, this EOS process, helps so many of my clients really get deep and grow the value of their business. And that's why I decided to become a professional EOS implementer. I got a lot of training for this. I work with several different leadership teams, and it's been fabulous because in addition to helping them save taxes with that type of planning, I'm actually able to go in, work with their leadership teams, and help them grow the value of their business. I've been very honored to work with Rex and Sylvia at Hydrotech, and we are going to be talking to Rex and Sylvia in great detail right after I set up some context about what we're going to try to accomplish today. So the rest of this presentation is going to go like this. We're going to have a high level of overview of EOS, which I'm going to set up the context for those of you who may not be familiar. Then we're going to take a little deeper dive, and we're going to have Rex and Sylvia talk about each of the 6 key components that I'm going to explain momentarily and how they're using those components, how they're using this process in practice to help them not only survive through this downturn that we're all experiencing, but really establish a structure so on the other side of this that they can thrive, which hopefully will happen very soon. And then, as Lisa said, make sure you send your questions along the way because we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. You each have a workbook Lisa sent out to you that has some of the tools we're going to be discussing. So hopefully you can use some of those tools with your own leadership team. And if you didn't get it, just reach out to Lisa and she can send you another copy. So what I'd like to do now is just talk about EOS and the process. And one of the big benefits it does is it helps leaders manage frustrations. And I believe that we all, as business leaders, know that feeling of frustration, that feeling of being stuck. And there's many different types of frustrations. And one that I'm sure that we're all trying to manage today is control, or the lack of control. Just not being able to set the course of your business because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. One of my clients described this feeling of not being in control as if his business were a van running down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and he's running as fast as he can, trying to catch up with it to open the back door so he can throw himself in it and take control. We all know what that feels like. Also, profit is a big frustration in normal times, but it's much more noticeable now because for many people, it's the lack of profit that's the frustration. And people, even though we all know we need great people to run organizations, we couldn't have a business without people, they can be frustrating. Our employees, our clients, our suppliers, even our family, spouses, and kids. And then finally, this frustration I want to talk about, this unknown future. We just don't know what our businesses are going to look like on the other end of this crisis. So everything about EOS is designed to let business leaders and leadership teams get control of these frustrations and use this as an operating system so they can get everything they want, get a grip on their business so they can move forward and achieve their future vision. EOS, as Lisa mentioned, it's an operating process that's described in a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. He's the creator of this. And effectively, what EOS does is it allows leadership teams to move forward, to achieve the vision of the leadership team together in alignment, collaboratively, so that everybody on the team and ultimately the company knows where this organization is going in the short term, but also the long term. And we're going to be talking a lot today about how we solve problems using EOS, how we solve issues. And issues aren't just problems, they're also opportunities that we haven't yet realized. So when leaders come together, especially in these uncertain times, discussing all of those things that they need to solve, this is a structure, a process that lets them move forward faster. And we're going to talk more about that later. EOS is just a simple way of operating an entrepreneurial company. It helps entrepreneurs and leadership teams get clear on their goals and their vision, align leadership teams around that vision, then communicate that vision to everyone else in the company, and then ultimately execute well to achieve the vision. And when you're on this journey to implement EOS, we talk about 6 key components. And every organization is either weak or strong in each of these components. Every issue that you face in your organization fall within one of these 6 components. So what are they? The first one is the vision component. And that's just about getting everyone on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. People. You can't execute your vision and make it real if you don't have great people. So the people component is how you get the right people in the right seats, attracting and retaining those people to achieve your vision. Data is about running your company on facts and figures rather than the feelings, egos, and emotions that so many entrepreneurial companies run on. And I like to say when vision, people, and data components strong, it creates this very transparent organization where all of your issues bubble up to the top and you can see them so clearly, which leads us to the issues component. And this is all about your issue solving ability. More about that in just a minute. Your process component is simply about getting the most important things done the first time, the right way, even when you're not there in person, to direct them. And then finally, the traction component, and that's what I think is the secret sauce to the EOS process. It's really your ability to bring your vision down to the ground and execute. I've seen over my career so many strategic plans that's gone unrealized because the execution piece, there's no structure around how to get results, how to focus, drive that discipline to get the results needed to achieve the vision. So there's no coincidence that vision's at the top of the model, traction's at the bottom of the model, because I like to say vision without traction is simply hallucination. What we do on our journey is we assess the strength of the 6 key components. What we're shooting for is 100% strong in each of the components. But we know that's utopia, it's not going to happen. It's perfection. Perfection often thwarts progress. Our goal is to get our clients to 80% strong in each of the 6 key components. Truth be told, most companies are only about 20% strong, succeeding in spite of themselves. So EOS is designed to get companies to that 80% threshold, and I believe Hydrotech is definitely one of those companies, and we're going to talk about that momentarily.
The meeting is now locked.
So this was just a high-level summary, and I'd like to move now into the components. So the first component, and this is where we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, is the issues component. And as I mentioned, every organization, everyone faces issues, which could be problems or could be opportunities that aren't yet realized. What we do is we teach leadership teams how to become great problem solvers. Great companies are just great problem solvers. So if you don't take anything out of this session today, I hope that you ultimately focus on your issues and use some of the techniques that we're about to discuss so you can walk out of this presentation and start using this particular tool to help your business. So the technique that I'm referring to is something called the issue solving track. And generally, when we work with leadership teams, we get them to get all of their issues out of their head onto a list, an issues list. And then collectively, they work together to prioritize what are those 1, 2, 3, those most important priorities. Not the one that's the easiest, the most important that they need to talk about that day. And then we move to what we call IDS. And you're going to hear Sylvia and Rex refer to that acronym. And all that stands for is identify your issue at the root cause, because often what we think is an issue is just a symptom. So you have to dig sometimes to find that real root cause. Then once you do, you move to discuss, where everyone around the table feels open and honest with each other. We create that culture where people feel free to challenge each other, really discuss what that issue is. Once we have everyone's perspective, and nobody gets to politic during this process, and that means saying your point more than once, then we move to solve. And so we walk out of the room having come up with some kind of solution, some kind of executable action, so that they know the next time they get together, all eyes will be looking at them to say, okay, how have you done? What did you do to help us move this issue to solve? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rex and Sylvia, because you guys are the real stars of the show. So talk to our audience about why you implemented EOS and how it's helped you, not only currently as we try to get out of this crisis, but how you plan on using these tools on the other side of this pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. We implemented EOS back in 2017. Crystal introduced it to us, and it was perfect timing because that was also about the time we were getting ready to reset our next 3-year strategy. And one of the things that was so appealing with EOS is how simple of a process it was. And our executive team, which there's 8 of us on the executive team, and we also call it our EOS team, we realized that this was really going to be more beneficial to us than anything else that we had done. So, as I mentioned, back in 2017, the first thing we had to do was set the vision. So we set the vision, and that was a collaborative approach, and a result of quite a bit of work within our team. So we set a 1-year, a 3-year, and a 10-year vision, and then everything was that we put in place was put in place to realize those particular goals. Now, the one thing nice about having EOS implemented now in today's times is because it makes solving issues so easy, it also allows you to be able to pivot easy. Right now, while we have a 1, a 3, and a 10-year goal, those are essentially have been put on hold. Right now, it's all about a 30, a 60, and maybe a 90-day goal. And we are addressing that daily in meetings. So, one thing is that this is a very simple process, and it brings issues right to the top quickly because we have a great team at Hydrotech that we trust each other completely, and we practice something we call blameless problem solving. And like Crystal mentioned, issues, problems, really they're opportunities. Because the whole idea is, what can you do as a group to be better for your own people, to be better for your customers, and to be better for your suppliers. So that's really what this is about. It's all about opportunities, and being able to address those quickly, you can move on and keep getting better and better.
Thank you, Rex. And Rex just talked about vision, and vision is one of the six key components. And as he mentioned, we're now going to move into the rest of the conversation around these 6 key components, talking about some of the tools so that Sylvia and Rex can share with you how they're using these tools real time, and hopefully you can take away some tidbits of value and use some of these tools yourself in your own organization. But when we talk about vision, it's really about aligning everyone's on the leadership team first with the same vision, because I can assure you every leader has a vision. Sometimes it's just not the same one. So it's critical to have a aligned common vision, and the way that we do that is simply by answering these 8 questions. And what are they? And I'll go through them briefly. Core values, that's who you are as a people. 3 to 5 characteristics, attributes that really define the right people for your organization, so that you hire, fire, reward, evaluate people on the core values once you've identified them. Core focus is why you exist. It's your why, your purpose, cause, and passion, and where that intersects with your niche. Rex referred to a 10-year target. That's just really the hairy, audacious goal. It's not a 10-page strategic plan. It's a goal that everybody on the team is aligned around. Marketing strategy, what are your uniques? What are you selling and telling to your target market after you've identified who they are? And then once you know who you are with core values, why you exist with core focus, where you're headed long term, and the marketing strategy that's going to get you there, then we bring all of this down to the ground and we say, okay, in 3 short years, where does this company need to be? Revenue, profit, and what else? And then if that's where we're headed for in 3 years, in 12 months, what does this company need to look like? And then we move into a 90-day world where every 90 days, these leaders come together, look at where they've been, how they did, what they executed on, figure out where they're going in the future, and then go back to work, each one with a quarterly ROC, which is simply nothing more than a strategic priority that they've agreed upon together. Together, that's the key here. And then finally, I mentioned issues, just getting all the other stuff that we didn't get to focus on that day out of their head on a list. And this is how Rex mentioned simplicity. All of that is literally kept on a 2-page document called the Vision Traction Organizer. Each of you have that tool in the handout that Lisa sent to you. And this is Hydrotech's Vision Traction Organizer. And you can see it's right there. It's not, like I said, a 10 or 20-page document, Rex. You and Sylvia, you can look at this, your team sees it, and it's right in front of you very simply and very clearly.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, Sylvia. Sorry.
The VTO has really helped us to organize our plans and achieve our vision using our core values. We look at this often, and it really allows us to solve issues with our values and our core focus.
And knowing where you're headed. And she mentioned, let me back up a minute, Rex, because let's see.
I can't.
I know you mentioned earlier about the pivoting, so maybe you can share this is the tool that you were referring to when you talked about 1 year, 3 year, 10 year.
Anyhow, Jill, the reason I was calling was to just connect as we are trying to figure out.
Oh, okay. Someone had their mic on. At least I was hearing another conversation. But yeah, this, in the past, a document like this would have been almost a bound, multi-page thing. So this makes it so simple for us, and it does allow easy pivot. One of the analogies that I use is, like an NFL team. If they're like 8-0 mid-season, and then all of a sudden their quarterback gets injured and is out for the year, well, all of a sudden you have to pivot and say, okay, how are we going to keep our team motivated to still reach the goal? The goal hasn't changed, but they sure have hit a rough spot and they're going to have to change how they operate to reach the goal. And you got to make sure the team's on board, that the new plan in place is does work, and they can still continue to win.
Well, and Rex, on the other side of this, it's just going to provide you and your team that framework, that ability to get where you need to go faster because you know how to do this process.
Yeah. The other part of it on the core focus that Sylvia had mentioned, it also tells us about our why, which is so important. And, for all of our people to understand why we do things we do and why we are here to serve our customers, that's also within this VTO. So it's been helpful.
It's a powerful tool. I hope you all can use it. The next component I'd like to talk about is people, because like I said, you can't achieve your vision without great people. And when I refer to people, I really mean two things: right people, which means people that share your core values, in the right seat. And we're going to talk about two tools we use with that. The first is, Sylvia was referring to really helping people understand core values. So this is a tool called the People Analyzer, and you all have this in your toolbook, your workbook that was sent out. This is simply putting your core values at the top and evaluating your team based on whether or not they, the majority of the time, exemplify your core values or they don't. And you can see Joanne Wright is our superstar here. She reeks of our core values. Martin Gilbert, on the other hand, not so much. And obviously these are names, not real names, but this is a great tool that you can sit down with your team, give them real live examples of whether they are or they aren't exemplifying those core values, so you can know and they can know if they're the right person. And Rex, you have an interesting take on this tool that you hope is going to be very helpful on the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah, we've used this. We used a similar idea back in 2008, 2009. But this is what's really helpful as we go through this. We have to make contingency plans, and if for some reason we have to make the unfortunate decision that we're going to have to reduce overhead by possible headcount reduction, this allows all of our managers to go through this and to understand who they have in their group that we want to win with. And and part of that is we use the GWC, which is I think it's an upcoming slide, but it's do they get it, and do they want it, and do they have the capacity to do what we're asking them to do? It's one thing about Hydrotech is we've and I'm sure some of your organizations are the same, especially family businesses tend to have people with a lot of tenure within an organization. And so that's really helpful in these difficult times, especially when you're using this type of a process. It's because, like us, we have a lot of people that have multiple skills. We promoted from within, so they have, they've come from different departments and they're in other departments. And so, for us, some of this is about, kind of in a simplified fashion, moving some chess pieces around if we have to get to that. This is all about a contingency plan. And it also will help you as you come out of this, is you might be able to upgrade your team. It's vitally important to be looking at this now. Whether or not you have to implement, we're looking at it now, whether we have to implement, we want to be stronger and better coming out of this, being more relevant and better able to serve our customers and their needs.
That's so well said. And what Rex is referring to and what you're looking at right now in EOS, we talk about leading with structure first. There's no names in any of these seats. What we say is, what does this company need to look like in good times, that is, where we're trying to increase the value in the next 12 to 18 months. So we really take a hard look at the structure, and then we say, okay, what specific roles do each of the functional seats need to accomplish? And then, and only then, do we put names. And again, that helps. It helps get rid of some of the emotional ties you have to certain people. This is about leading with structure first. And this is Hydrotech's accountability chart. And Sylvia, I know you lead the sales team. And when sometimes companies have to make tough decisions and model, and people should be doing a lot of what ifs. What if my revenue this year goes down 10%, 15%, 20%? How do we restructure organization to accommodate that smaller revenue possibility? So maybe you can share how you're using this accountability chart to do just that.
Well, as we all know, the situation is extremely dynamic. As Rex alluded to, all department managers were asked to prepare a contingency plan. I used the accountability chart. I used the functionality of the chart to reflect the structures we will need if our business revenues decline, for example, say by 20%. Maybe there's a role in here that I could combine with another. And it's the functions first, the roles first, and then the people.
That's exactly right. Sometimes that's tough, but it's in this survival mode. You have to do what you have to do to come out and to survive on the other side. The next component is the data component. Again, this is really using a handful of metrics we call measurables. And typically what we do is we as a team, leadership teams, we identify what those measurables are. And these are not financial statement type measurables, as CPA I would normally refer. These are activity-based weekly measurables. And it allows leadership teams to start to see trends. Now, you can see on this scorecard, there's a name by each person. That's whose eyes we look into when a weekly goal is not met. So Rex and Sylvia, I know that this is something you guys are looking at every day, especially now when every day counts. Maybe you can share how you're using this tool.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. This is this isn't our scorecard. There's some ours is quite similar. Where they have cash balance listed. In that category, we're looking at days outstanding. We've always looked at days outstanding as kind of a leading indicator on how the health of our customers. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that days outstanding is going out. Companies are wanting to try to hold on to as much cash as possible. But I can give you a thing that we IDS'd a few years ago and how it really came into being. It worked, and it worked just last week. So a couple years ago, we put in a process that we wanted our controller to visit our top 50 customers. Now, while we haven't maybe achieved her being seeing all 50, but she has probably seen the top 20 and has developed a relationship within these organizations. Well, just last week, one of those companies implemented a new terms. And it was a kind of a form letter, but it was personalized that they were going to extend their already pretty liberal terms of 90 days, and they were extending them to 120. And because she had a relationship with them, our controller was able to contact them and work it out that we would not be included in that. So we were able to keep it at 90 days. So because of something we IDS'd a few years ago, it had impact today. And
that's incredible. That's so important, especially now, right? I mean, that's fabulous. And Sylvia, I know I mentioned that you lead the sales team, so maybe you can share about one of the metrics that is very important to your team, and then how your team, because you all have actually implemented EOS throughout the organization, so how your team is working on this particular issue.
Well, the key issue here was tracking sales activity to be sure that our customer relationships were being maintained during this downtime for our outside salespeople. We identified the root cause, and with everyone's participation, we agreed on a solution, and we solved it. I can say that I know that we're referencing IDS quite a few times, and it just becomes part of your DNA.
And Sylvia, this is something that you as a department, this is not necessarily the EOS team, the leadership team. This is something that your departmental team has their own scorecard, and they did collectively together.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have this going throughout our organization, the process.
Yeah, every department.
And the next component is the process component. As I mentioned, that's just identifying those handful of core processes that your organization needs to document, simplify, and then make sure everybody understands them and follows them. And Rex and Sylvia, with this disruption that we're all facing in our way we do business, I know personally, because I'm very familiar with your processes, that you all implemented and actually created processes around working remotely before you really had to. So maybe you can share how that's helping you now.
Yeah, that's another one of those. Some people talk about collateral damage. This is a collateral benefit. Years ago, a few years ago, we made an investment to be stronger digitally and also have all the resources to be able to work remotely, not really thinking it would be needed in a situation like today, but more as we hire younger and younger people, the ability to work remotely is more important to them. And so this was more about an HR issue in terms of employee retention and also being able to attract the best. Well, because we made those investments and we had the internal structure to do it, we seamlessly went from our office staff in the building to 95% of our office staff remotely, essentially overnight. And we haven't missed a beat. And communicate, we're on a VoIP phone system, so the extensions, nothing changed. Every, people that were dialing directly or dialing into an extension, it went right to our remote staff.
And Sylvia, you've been very responsible in helping your team with training around this.
I have. We use the Microsoft Teams format, and everybody is in contact with each other on a daily basis, like every hour. The inside sales team, the outside sales team has learned some skills as far as presenting remotely that perhaps they weren't really using before because they were visiting physically. So they have really added to their list of skills through this process.
Well, that's a differentiator, because a lot of companies document the processes, but until you train your people, there's no point. So you guys really understand the importance of documenting it very simply, but training. So again, that's a critical discussion point. Hopefully people on the webinar take away. It's not about just putting it on paper or on a digital format. You have to train them.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Then the final component, and this, again, I said this was our secret sauce in EOS, it's the traction component. It's really creating that focus, that discipline, that level of accountability. And a couple of tools that we use, that we teach our teams, is the rocks that we've talked about before. Again, it's those most important strategic priorities that need to be accomplished within the next 90 days. Not just what Rex thinks is the most important or Sylvia thinks is the most important. Their team together put all the issues out, and then they collectively determine what the most important ones are, the 3 to 5 most important company rocks, then the 3 to 5 most important individual rocks. So when they come back together the next quarter and all eyes are on that person, done or not done, hopefully at least 80% of them or more are done. Again, it creates that accountability. The other tool that we use for the traction component is what we refer to as the meeting pulse. And a meeting pulse is nothing more than a systematic set of meetings. You've heard Sylvia and Rex refer to a level 10 meeting. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but that's a weekly meeting. There's also quarterly meetings, because we live in a 90-day world where we come together every quarter, we look back and see how we did last quarter and see if we got our rocks completed, reassess where we're at today, realign our vision, because as human beings, we need to reassess our vision and come together because we tend to fray, and then where we're headed next quarter. And we live in that 90-day circle, quarter in and quarter out. Same day, same time, start on time, end on time, same agenda. That's the structure of the meeting. And that also applies to the weekly meetings that we call level 10 meetings, because we want to get the meetings to a level 10 in terms of quality. And I will tell you a story. When I first talked to the Hydrotech leadership team, and I shared this concept of weekly level 10 meetings, I just got a budget, another meeting. And that's what many people say. But because we turn these meetings into problem-solving sessions, my clients love them. So Rex and Sylvia, maybe you can share your thoughts around the level 10 and how you're using those today, because they're not necessarily weekly for you right now.
No, that's right. This may be the single most important benefit of the EOS, is having these regular meetings and the ability to solve the problems. It's all, and it goes through all those 6 categories. But this is the best thing that's happened for us. Is we meet every Monday morning at 8:30 to 10. It's a 90-minute meeting. The agenda is the same, and it is we actually enjoy being with each other because we're a cohesive team. We talk about the issues, we bring them up, and we address them. One thing I think Sylvia mentioned earlier is that we have implemented this throughout our organization, whether it be in the sales group, the engineering group, and our production group. So a lot of these issues, since it's throughout our organization, a lot of these issues for us are bottom up. So there's nobody in our organization that's afraid to speak up about, how can we be better? How can we better serve our own, our internal customers and our external customers? So this is key.
And Sylvia, you run these meetings for Hydrotech, and I think a lot of people watching might say, we seem to go to meetings, they're a waste of time. All we do is talk, never get anything accomplished. That's not so much so. That's not true at all in Hydrotech's case. Maybe you can share how that journey, it's like exercising a muscle, right? You don't start out that way, but now you guys are a problem-solving machine.
Absolutely. As Rex alluded to, it really has been the single biggest impact that EOS has had on our organization. It's also transformed our leadership team with meetings that are highly efficient in problem solving. We have also cascaded the level 10 throughout the entire company, and it has really allowed the rest of the company to be really involved in the whole process. Everybody has rocks, everybody is contributing, everybody is part of the solution. And right now we are having daily level 10s with the 3 main components, which are the big subjects today are the people, what new policies we have to enact today, and customers. Those are the 3 main biggest issues.
Well, I like to say that this meeting pulse keeps the circles connected, and it allows you to communicate well, share vision, and frankly, it ends up saving a lot of time because you don't have meeting after meeting just trying to communicate what the other one said. So having these circle connected meetings is a very powerful thing. Do you guys have any final thoughts, Rex and Sylvia, before we move on to questions and answers that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I hope that I thank all the people that took time out of their busy schedules to jump in on this webinar, and I just hope that you can have at least one takeaway, and how really impactful this has been for Hydrotech and our ability to solve problems. So, I think on that workbook that Lisa sent out, you can look through that and kind of start to begin filling those out they're pretty easy to fill out. That'll be kind of helpful for you to understand how easy and simple this is. Because Crystal's right. The last thing we wanted to do was add to our meeting schedule, but this actually has helped us eliminate meetings, to be honest with you. So it's been good. Thanks.
So Lisa, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and you can help us facilitate the questions if you would.
All right, I'll be happy to. Just a heads up though, my mute button has a life of its own, and if I suddenly bug out, you're going to have to moderate the chat box yourselves. But for right now, I'd like to just address what Rex just touched on, because I 100% agree. As a traction user now for 5 years, it is very simple. But David Owens asked a question in the chat box. Is it wise to hire an EOS implementer when you're getting started? And I would say 1,000% yes. Our experience, and I would like the panel to comment as well. Our experience, and I had the role for a little while, like 3 months, as the implementer. And, that's really the one that drives the meetings and the agendas and the issues, discussions and everything. And it's pretty hard when you are inside the organization to do that well, and you are so close to this. Sylvia, I applaud you because it's a difficult role I struggled with. So I'd like to open it up to the panel and just, what does an EOS implementer do that a company may not do well on their own?
Yeah, I don't think I could express any stronger the need to have an outside implementer. To at least once you get started, the whole idea is, Crystal trained us. I know she trained Sylvia really well. Sometimes I may be a slow learner, but I think she's slow. I think she has trained our team really well. And the whole idea is for that to, kind of the idea of, you train them and then they go and do the work. I just think it's so difficult that to try to implement this on your own. She's able to bring us on to focus. An implementer can bring you into focus and keep you on task, because a lot of the times at the beginning, you're like that group that's 20% effective. Tangents everywhere, and you got to have somebody that can, that's respected and says, whoa, time out, guys. We got to stay on this. So I highly recommend having an implementer.
I will just add, it's hard to be part of the working on the business. I like to tell my leadership teams, today we're going to make you guys all the board of directors. So if you are trying to implement and stay neutral as the implementer, it's difficult to be part of the team. And right now I'm working with a team that tried to self-implement twice, and they just felt like, both times they got off track. My job, I have 3 roles as a professional implementer: teacher, facilitator, and coach. And my job is to get in there, help this team learn the tools, teach them the strategies, and then get the heck out of their way. Now, some teams keep me on and they like me to come and facilitate their quarterlies. Others, once they've learned the process, there's no need for me to be there, which is absolutely fine. So that's the role of an implementer. I know, Sylvia, you now have taken the reins for your team. And I know we spent a ton of time with your organization. I loved every moment of it, teaching every level of your team. So that was, so just to be clear, Hydrotech was my client, EOS client, 2.5 years or so? And now Sylvia is running the meetings. But if they need me, they know where to find me.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that we would not have been able to learn this process without Crystal's amazing help with this process.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a great group of professional EOS implementers around our community. So thank you very much.
Yeah. But thank you. But I would agree. And we have an implementer as well, or who forms that facilitator coach role, and got us to a place where now, if we can handle it on our own, but they're sure nice to come back and coach us through when we need it. So it's a learning process. So I'd like to switch gears to the accountability chart, if I could, please. And someone had a great question. How do you factor in external resources like 1099 employees or others that you have on contract? How do you do that?
Let me go back to that chart. And Sylvia, you and Rex can certainly talk what I'm doing. So basically, oftentimes marketing is one that gets outsourced, right? Or maybe IT. So what we do is, you can see right here, I don't know if you all can see my screen, but where it says marketing, maybe they don't have a team underneath them, but they manage the outsourced third party. So we literally make that a part of their role in terms of the person who is in charge of marketing. And maybe it's not a separate person, maybe it's the integrator up here in charge. But bottom line, somebody has the role of managing that outside third party. Sometimes they actually invite the third party to come to their leadership team meetings when they're talking about issues around marketing.
That's how we handled it as well. As we were just in the thick of going over our accountability chart when we had the stay-at-home order issued, and we had to decide to scale back and send outside. That's exactly how we handled it as well. Couple of questions around issues, and one is, it's a two-part question I'd like you to tackle. One is, what do you do when an issue doesn't get resolved? And then the second part, in answer in either order, how do you, as issues come up day to day, perhaps outside of the leadership team level, down further in the organization, as these, but trained as a IDS user, so one of the functional teams. As those daily issues come up, how do you work those into the L10s and the quarterly meeting cycle?
So would you or Rex want to take that one since?
Wow, that is a really good question, because I'm trying to think back. I think that there's been times when we've covered issues over a couple L10s, because sometimes it takes a little bit more time to really be able to drill down and understand what the real underlying issue is. And I can't say you're going to solve every one at one level 10, so they can carry on, but that also kind of becomes part of the to-do as well. Maybe we need more information, or we need more data to really address it. So I know Sylvia probably can add to that, as she's kind of the keeper and leader of all this for us.
Well, I can tell you that since we're so close as a team, that was almost exactly what I was going to say, is that there sometimes are issues that you need more information. So that does become a to-do for someone. And then you come back the next week, you find out, okay, what did you find out? And a lot of times it might go on for another level 10 meeting, but then we have solved it because we've gathered all the data and the information we needed to do so.
Yes, so the idea when they mention a to-do, what that is typically as you IDS an issue, whatever the priorities, if you go back to the chart where we have IDS, effectively if they IDS issue number 1, and to Sylvia's point, maybe there needs to be more information to really get to the full solve. Somebody has an action item, and a 7 to 10 day action item we call a to-do. It's built right into the agenda, so the next week when we come back to our level 10 meeting, hopefully that to-do has gotten to done so that they can move on and take the next step towards solve in that issue. But we don't walk out of a meeting without some action item around an IDS. We just don't leave it there and say, oh, well, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, and I would say that process works great unless the issue is huge. And when the issue is huge, then it goes upstream, and that issue it probably ends up on somebody's rocks list or a couple people's rocks list. So we have a question from Eli White, or no, I'm sorry. Anyway, I don't know who submitted it, but they wanted you to go over a little more about rocks. And rocks they seem so simple, but they're really not. We always find ourselves asking the question, is this a rock or is this my job? Yeah, it's going to take up all of my time this quarter, but it's my job. So what is it?
So here's the thing. We talk a lot about compartments in EOS. Everything has a compartment. Every issue has a compartment. I just said issues from 7 to 10 days, those are to-dos. Issues that are 90 days or longer are rocks. And rocks are the most strategic things we have to get done in the next 90 days. We as a team, all the issues sitting out there that are the big strategic items, the most important ones are the rocks for the next 90 days. So Sylvia's going to take one. Rex is going to take one, I'm going to take one, Lisa's going to take one. We might go back and get other team members involved, but when we come back together the next quarter, whatever it was, and we call them SMART rocks, we write them SMART, specific, measurable, and attainable, so that there's no question about what needs to happen within those 90 days. So again, rock is simply a 90-day strategic priority, and it's basically taken off of Stephen Covey's concept, where the biggest stuff, that's the most important stuff we got to get done. We got to tackle that stuff first, because if we don't, other things get in the way.
I can probably give an example of a quarterly rock that might be helpful. Last year, about I think it was probably second or third quarter, there was an opportunity for us to take on a new product line. And so this was basically the guy that handles all of our factory automation. This was a product that would be added to his kind of his bag of tricks. And but so because of that, he had to make sure that he did the ROI, he did the impact, he did all that. But that was a rock. So that was an important. It wasn't something that could be solved overnight or in a week. But he went through and he got the accounting group involved. He got the sales group involved. He got to help with that. Like as Crystal mentioned, that you involve other people within the organization, and then and based on that, just to give you, we ended up going forward with that. There was going to be a significant investment to do this because we were going to have to buy we have to make some CapEx expenditure to do this. But I think it's a pretty good example of a quarterly rock. Something that is impactful to your business. That isn't something you can just address in 7 days.
That's exactly right. It's something that's longer than 7 days. And in this world we're living in today, we've been talking about 90-day rock, but we're making an exception because sometimes right now we don't have 90 days. We might have 30-day rocks, correct? It's important we're pivoting, but typically a rock is a 90-day rock, and generally sometimes issues can last longer than 90 days. Maybe it's something you can't completely solve in 90 days. Then we call the strategic initiative as it relates to that issue a milestone rock. So you might have a milestone rock to determine whether we're going to go out and evaluate vendors, and then next meeting we're going to come in next quarterly to determine we're going to say yes or no because somebody is going to evaluate it or research and put a ROI analysis together so we can determine then yes or no. So there are milestone rocks too, but basically anything longer than a 7 to 10 day item. And anything, I didn't say this, anything that's not one of the most important things we need to do in 90 days, that's where they just live on an issues list so you don't forget them. They're big, they're important, you just got bigger fish to fry this quarter.
Yeah. So real quick, we have time for a couple more questions, and I think I know the answer to this one, Rex, but David wants to know if having traction in place up and running, did that make the acquisition any easier, increase valuation?
It did. That was we used honestly, and that's really an interesting question, but yeah, because the people that had acquired us saw how organized that we were and how strong our executive team was. I mean, a lot of times that's the value of a business. A key part of that is the executive team. They got to make sure that these guys, a company that someone's acquiring, or we acquired, I think 4 companies over about a 10-year period. The key is the organization, is the management team. So to answer his question, I think this had an impact on that.
Yeah. I would say it makes everything easier and more effective and better.
Yeah.
Like yoga. So one more question before we wrap things up for today. And, I think most of us are anticipating, at least hoping, that we'll be returning back to some kind of normal business operation soon. Hopefully May, maybe it's going to be a little bit longer. No one really knows. But as we think about getting back and getting our teams back up to whatever that new normal is, how do you think traction plays into this, and how can it be used to get people ramped up quickly?
Well, for Hydrotech, knowing that our team is, we're already been spending a lot of time on how are we going to look coming out of this, and how are we going to be relevant in the market. And this is, I think, planning ahead for when we finally come out of it, as opposed to waiting, is the difference between, as Crystal said early, between thriving or just limping along.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is key.
Yeah, Sylvia, you lead the sales team. So how do you think your sales team is going to fare since they have this available to them? Oh, you're on mute, Sylvia. No, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you. We can't. I bet you I can answer for you. They're going to look great. They're going to look like rock stars coming out of it.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. Sometimes the mute button on this thing has a mind of its own. So before we wrap things up, Crystal, Rex, sorry, Sylvia, but do you have any concluding thoughts before we wrap this up today?
For me, thank you again for the people that joined in and took the time out of their day. And this is a topic that I really enjoy talking about. So, and I thank Crystal for including me in this webinar. So thanks again. And Lisa, thanks for doing this.
Sure. Can you talk yet? I will just say, Lisa, thanks for having us. I mean, I really hope that if the audience, hopefully they can use some of these tools. And let me just offer this. One of my core values, and our core values, is help first. So if you do have any questions, if there's anything at all that we can clarify for you as you try to implement these tools yourself and your own team, just feel free to call me. I'm happy to help you.
Yeah, ditto.
That's very generous.
Yeah. Reach out. We're happy to help in any way.
And I'm reading Sylvia's lips. She says, me too. Yes, contact me too. So to that end, this is being recorded, and Crystal mentioned the resources, the EOS handouts. And at the end of this, I'm going to send everyone an email with the resources attached and a link to the recording. And in that email is direct links to our panelists' email. So you can just shoot them a quick note, thank them for volunteering their time today and sharing this information, or ask any questions. And then I would also say, if you're not familiar, on the Goering Center website, goering.uc.edu, we have a professional services registry. And in that are listed all of the people in the Goering Center community who have this skill set to offer. So just be aware that that's out there as well. And on behalf of everybody at the Goering Center, thank you very much. Have a terrific day. And thank you again to our panel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.